Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Incidentally in the News brought to you by CyberClan. I am once again joined with my colleagues, Kadir Levent and Larry Whiteside Jr. Welcome, guys. How are you today?
Doing great.
Wonderful.
Enjoying the what is sunshine in the UK.
Yeah.
Trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's actually like a 65-degree day down here up here in DC, which I'm not used to. I was just stuck in 90-degree, 90% humidity for 2 weeks, and so this is like a whole new thing for me.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I live that every day, and I enjoy it.
All right, well, let's get to it because we have quite a few topics that we wanted to discuss today, but a couple of different things that were in the news this week. One was talking about small to mid-size enterprises or small to mid-size businesses, SMB, SME, depending on where you are and how you initialize those names. But the small to mid-sized market is hugely vulnerable to cybersecurity, not only attacks, but to negligence in their keeping up with their security. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit because this is a key market that we're focused on. We want to make sure that these companies are successful. And Kadir, you were just talking through quite a few statistics. Can you just bring a few of those up for us to talk about? Because I think it's really important for people out there to understand the scary percentages that are really putting SMBs at risk.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, I mean, this is always a hot topic for us, and especially, you know, a lot of our clients are in this space, in the SME, SMB space. And I think it just goes back down to a lot of small businesses never think that they're going to be a victim. They don't think they'll be targeted. And I think just some of these numbers really make that reality. So these numbers are focused on the US. So these are statistics for the last 12 months. And when we look at some of these numbers, 43% of cyber attacks actually target small businesses. So they are the ones that become the victims.
Right. So
when you start looking at the numbers of SMEs across the US, that's a pretty significant number for those businesses to be targeted. And when we actually look at the rate of increases in terms of cyber attacks, there was a 424% increase in a new small business cyber breach in the last 12 months. So it's not going away. The problem is becoming worse and worse and worse. And it goes back down to reinforcing the point around it's not a matter of if anymore, it really is a matter of when. There was another one here as well. So around 47% of small businesses have absolutely zero understanding on how to protect themselves against cyber attacks. And we were actually talking about this before the call, and it goes back down to what does that investment look like from an SME? What does that need to look like? You know, another statistic here says, when we look at these businesses, only 3 out of 4 small businesses say that they don't have the personnel to address IT security. 3 out of 4 businesses just don't have the resources to do it.
Right.
You leave yourself so vulnerable. You know,
right.
it's unreal. And I mean, I've got loads more statistics, and you know, and we'll run through these. But I think one of the ones that impacted me the most on here, it was about how or what happens to a business after a cyber attack. And I just need to find it here, but it's, let's have a look here. So when we look at businesses, small businesses that have had a cyber attack, okay, 60% of those small businesses that are victims will go out of business within 6 months following that cyber event.
Heartbreaking.
60%. It is. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
And I think you were saying something like the average cost of the breaches are just under $1 million, but then it's something like 43% of companies have budgets of $1,000 or less on their security posture. Guys, do
exactly
do the math for me.
It's crazy.
So think of this, right? The SMB market makes up the backbone of this country, right? They are over 70% of the businesses that exist in the US are considered small and medium-sized businesses. So when you think about those statistics and you think about the pandemic we're dealing with and how many are going out of business because of the pandemic, right? And this was something they couldn't prepare for, but cyber is, right? But what happens is they don't even know. They don't even think about it, right? You know, the coffee shop on the corner, right? The small chain that's in, you know, this one little geography. Like I've got a buddy who runs a thing called Crab Kings, right? And they've got 2 locations, 3, one in Austin, one in Houston, and one in Atlanta. Like these types of organizations that are a backbone that are hiring, you know, tens of 20s of 50 or 100 or so people is the backbone of what this country is built on. And they are at risk because what attackers have realized is it's about being as opportunistic as possible. It's no longer about the long game and the humongous payouts. It's about these little ones because the reality is, from an attacker standpoint, there's less risk in dealing with the smaller ones because the smaller ones not having the security stack in place, not having the security professionals in place, they aren't going to have as much ability to trace back to identify who the originator of the attack was, right? So their ability to trace that back down, they're probably not going to report it to the FBI. They're not going to go through a lot of the things that the big companies are going to do. So if you can hit X number of small companies over X period of time, your ROI as an attacker just goes through the roof.
Right.
And small businesses just have to realize that. Once they realize that, they will start understanding the value of implementing some sort of security in their business, right? And it doesn't have to be major things, but there's some basic things that they should all just be doing.
Right. And I think like one of the things that you were mentioning is about how a lot of the small businesses, had to switch to doing things in the cloud and using, the software as a service business or industry in its totality has done a really great job of marketing. And most small business owners now know, I don't need a CPA. I can get QuickBooks, and not only QuickBooks, but I can just get it online through intuit.com. You're welcome for your little advertising there. We'll take the check later. But ERP solutions, all of these things are available to rent, right? Why scale, to build your scale through renting the capability when you can't afford to buy it. I wonder if we've just done a bad job in our business and managed security services of making sure that these companies understand that the renting the capability and the capacity is also available for your security posture. Like you don't need to be afraid of what it would cost to create your own security operations center, because there are organizations, certainly like us, that do rent this as a capability, and therefore the scalability for your organization exists. It's the same as if you were to outsource your accounting. When you don't you focus on your business and leave this stuff up to the experts. And again, you're not having to incorporate this into a true overhead cost. It's more of renting the capacity, right? I mean, I wonder if we've just done a bad job at that.
Well, part of the problem is the managed security services market, when it came out, was targeted at the big guys.
Right.
And so a lot of SMBs don't think it's something that's consumable for them. Right. So like I recently got into a conversation yesterday with a buddy of mine, and he's got a client that's not big, that fits into the SMB space, and they went out looking for managed service entities, and they went to some of the big names in the space, and they came back for even them as a small entity. I think it was 400 users, and they came back at $500,000, and they looked at them like, what? How? Well, $500,000? Like, what am I going to do with that? Right. And even when he told me that, I'm like, wait, what, how, what? Like, I need to look at the math behind that. But so when you see things like that, that's where SMB starts to think, well, maybe this is not something that's consumable for me. And so I think us players that are targeting them, that are here to really support them, have to help them understand the big players, they do things differently. We're here specifically for you. We are here to target you because we recognize that you are the most vulnerable population. And so we want to help you. Our goal is not the big guys. Our goal is not to be, playing in the big field with the big boys. We're fine playing on the junior fields over here, because at the end of the day, we're having a greater social impact by helping the SMB space than we ever would in helping any other space. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's super important. And I think, but on the back of that, Larry, I think the community you're talking about, the ones that are actively even considering some sort of managed service, are the guys and girls that are taking that side of security into awareness. I think what's stunning, again, looking at these statistics, is 54% of small businesses still think they're too small for a cyber attack. So it's not even on their radar. They're not even looking for security or managed security or anything like that. 25% don't even realize that a cyber event would cost them any money. They think it's a matter of just reset the systems, turn everything back on, off we go. But there is, as you and I both know, and Aaron, as well, there's a huge financial impact. And it doesn't just end with the financial impact in terms of how much it costs to get everything back up online, how much a potential investigation is going to cost you, how much any regulatory obligations you might have may cost you. the problem really comes, and goes back down to that kind of 6-month scenario, is the reputational damage. And we are seeing it in the media every day now.
Right.
Every day we're seeing it in the media. There's a new breach, there's a new big company that's been here, and millions of records are being, and if you become one of those businesses, even as a small business in your local community, and that gets out, what are the chances of survival? So I think that's the problem. And again, looking at these statistics, 54% of businesses don't even have a plan. So okay, so we're not really going to take it into consideration. We shouldn't really get hit. But if we did, we don't have a plan anyway.
Right.
So we wouldn't even know how to respond.
Right.
So it really is, I think, going back down to what Larry said, I think it's what we're trying to do now is educate, right? Is educate the market, educate the SMB space. There are organizations like us that want to help, want to make it affordable, want to make security accessible. And yeah, it's a cost. There's always a cost, but it's a cost now to protect the business and to protect potentially spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars further down the line should something happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to for me, really.
Yeah, I mean, the business interruption is real, right? And I mean, I would say, again, as our sort of resident Luddite, just think about, if you don't have your phone with you, like, how do most people, now I happen to still write my plan down in my calendar every day. My schedule is written. So if my computer goes down, guys, I know what meetings I'm supposed to have. I don't know how I'm going to conduct the meetings because my computer will be out of luck and I won't have access to Zoom. But, these are the little things that can help people sort of visualize what truly, again, don't just think about this as privacy data. That's not the only thing attackers are after. And legitimately think of your day-to-day running your life. Forget your business. What does the interruption look like in your life when your device dies, when you're out at a bar? Like that, something as simple as that. You all of a sudden freak out. Oh my gosh, I have no more power to my phone. I don't know my husband's phone number because it's been programmed in my phone. Okay, take that and start thinking about what that looks like in your business. And that's where we really need people. We're not trying to strike fear in people's hearts, but this is a legitimate thing. And when you look at, why you get car insurance and other things, insurance is important. I think you said 91% of small businesses do not get cyber insurance, cyber liability insurance. It's all the little things that I think people are starting to come to a reckoning and understanding what it is, but it's a big world we need to tackle. And for sure, we here at CyberClan are focused on this particular market, as you mentioned. So I'm excited to see what we can do to help improve all of our small to mid-sized businesses' cybersecurity health. But speaking of that, we were talking about privacy data. And again, I really think that a lot of people, if they don't know much about cybersecurity, that's what they think about. My name and my passwords are going to get stolen, and that's what I'm worried about. But another thing in the news, trucking. Trucking is coming under some unique and interesting legislations and regulations because the Internet of Things also relates to trucks. And as you were talking about before we jumped on this call, Kadir, ships, our entire logistics systems and supply chains are at risk day to day from hacking. So let's talk about that a little bit. Kadir, maybe if you could start talking about some of the regulations that they were starting to pull into place and how they might play out.
I think it's actually quite simple when you strip it down to its bare bones. So the UN and the EU are now looking to enforcing certain legislations into trucking and manufacturers. And the reason why is they rely on certain systems that are on these vehicles. That's both when you look at Volvo with their new autonomous stuff coming out, you look at some of the other companies and the navigation systems that are on here, the amount of control that these vehicles have. Not only that, they actually also spoke about various other electric components that are on these vehicles. Even as much as the facilities that they're built in, the fact that they're built in a facility that is relying on more and more electronics. So there's lots of kind of moving parts. And it was interesting, we were talking about this earlier, that we saw a very similar movement not too long ago in maritime. And again, it goes back down to, huge shipping vessels that rely on their navigational systems. And if you imagine you've got this huge ship in the middle of the ocean and they are relying on that navigation to reach their destination, what if that navigation either doesn't work or it's somehow programmed or manipulated to go to a different location? Pirates are still out there. Piracy is a huge problem, especially across the Middle East and Africa. So yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. It's about really stepping up the due diligence for manufacturers and actually taking the necessary steps to test their equipment penetration, vulnerability, doing all those tests so that when it hits the client, they have a certain level of comfort that actually my systems are secure.
Yeah. And Larry, we've talked about this too, at the Internet of Things. We talked about it with healthcare, something else that was just in the news. Medigate, I believe is what it's called, but it's a new company, well, relatively new company. But they recognize the opportunity in the healthcare system. So I think there was some statistic like a person in the ICU relies on 10 to 15 connected devices to keep them alive.
At least. At least. It is. So a lot of people don't realize when you walk into an ICU, a hospital room in general, every light you see is connected to something. Right. Every beep you hear is something measuring something related to the person's health. And they're all connected and they're all running operating systems. That each and every one of them is running a different operating system underneath that. And the impact on how the data is transferred between them, how the nurses get to see the data, how the physicians see. Like there is such a huge ecosystem in all of this IoT stuff. Even so one thing, so flooding is going on right now, right? Like, so we've got this huge storm that's going on across the central US, and flooding is a major thing. And it's been a major thing now for a couple of months because we've had a number of major storms. A lot of people don't realize out in the bay and all of these rivers and tributaries, there are flood gauges. These flood gauges are connected. They're connected back to river authorities who are monitoring the levels of the water. Every dam across the country has flood gauges because they have to measure and ensure that the water doesn't reach a certain height to breach the dam. So they then have to open a floodgate to be able to manage the water behind the dam. Well, that then also means they have to manage the water as it flows downstream to be able to send warnings out to people who live downstream that they're releasing. Again, like there's so many interconnected systems that do this. And I don't think people understand as it relates to supply chain, as it relates to IoT, as it relates to every aspect of technology, there is a piece of something that is reporting data. It's just the reality of what in the world is going on, right? So there's a new craze on Instagram and other social medias where people think this one particular bra manufacturer under Victoria's Secret is tracking people. They're
that there's chips in the bras.
There's chips in the bras, and they're tracking the children. Right? Like, go open your child's bra, and like there are chips in the bra, and I'm like that's RFID tags. Right? Yeah. That's all it is. It's an RFID tag. Right? Now, the reality is the purpose of the RFID tag is to track the stuff during the supply chain, and be able to, once the stuff is in the store, for people to be able to, at a moment's notice, be able to say, oh no, we don't have those in place. We don't have that inventory. We don't have enough. But what people have now gotten their minds to is, well, once it leaves the store, what now happens with the RFID chip? Are they still tracking it?
Right.
Are they not still tracking it? What does that give them the ability to do? Because this RFID chip is now inside of this clothing that people are wearing outside of the store, right? It's not just in the packaging. It's not just in the box. It's now stitched into the different clothing. Yeah. So it is amazing, but all of that presents security issues. Every single piece of all that presents a potential security issue. And if companies big and small don't start thinking through all of these ways that we utilize technology, utilize data, and the security implications associated with it, it could be massive, massive paranoia, like just this little RFID chip is causing with people now, right? Yep. So a lot to think.
I mean, relating it back to the truck story and the autonomous vehicles, again, like be careful what you wish for. Everyone, since Minority Report came out, we've all wanted the world to fast go towards, AI and all these other things, but we don't realize that we benefit from the amazing innovation in technology for sure, but it does leave us open to a substantial amount of cyber breaches. And to your point, it's not always, and it reaches into our paranoia, right? So we are rightfully a little bit fearful about what could happen. But again, this is why companies need to be so sure that they can protect themselves, because as Kadir said, reputation, it's a dog eat dog world out there. In the world of Amazon, you gotta fight to get your spot, at the gate here. So you gotta be competitive. And there was even an article the other day where is cybersecurity becoming the new, your security posture? Is it becoming the new, are you green? did you buy a LEED certified building, right? So people are now looking at consumer brands saying, can I trust you? And by that, I mean, what does your security posture look like? How much can I trust that you're not going to have cars that just start driving themselves into buildings, or that you're not going to have my data stolen and put out places? And so companies need to take this, into serious consideration, not just for the financial cost, but because there are consumers now out there looking at you saying, do I trust you as a company? And we saw this just today, Dunkin' Donuts, it's a cough or a sneeze for them to spit out $650,000 in fees because they were negligent. But the reputational damage that did to the company of people going, wait a minute, like, come on, Dunkin', your coffee's great, your donuts are nice, but you let all my stuff go. And that's reputation.
Think about this cost as related to the number of people that were impacted. It was only 20,000 people impacted.
Right.
Now that sounds like a small number, right? Or doesn't sound like a small number from a number standpoint. But when you think about Dunkin' Donuts, right, that's probably a tiny percentage of the total number of customers they have. So if it was 680,000, right, for 20,000 people, right, put a couple of zeros behind that, and then think what happens to the fine then.
Well,
right?
and the breach of the 20,000 impacts your millions of customers, right? You only had 20,000 records stolen, but those 20,000 now cost you reputational damage across millions. What was worth the risk? Why was that worth the risk? Kadir, what were you about to say?
No, it's just exactly that. And no, it's not at all. It just goes back down to what the point we're trying to make here, right? Which is don't become a victim. Really don't become a victim. And it's just make the investment now, take it very seriously. Cyber is a big thing, it's definitely growing, and just don't become a victim. But we don't want to see any more, small businesses suffer because of this. Like Larry said, there's so much going on in the world right now. And if there's any way that we can support each other to survive is just listen to this messaging. It is happening. We deal with these incidents every day. We are dealing with breaches every day in this market. If you've got any questions or concerns, just call us. And honestly, we will do whatever we can to help you. But right now, it's a real threat. It's a threat. Take it seriously, and get some help.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. And I want to make sure that I put this out there, right? So we talk about how bad it is. We talk that all these small businesses need to do something. And we talk about that it's going to happen at some point, right? So here's the reality. What we have to do as small businesses, when we say do something, we know that you're going to get breached, is just prepare, right? Have some basic security software installed, have a partner that is going to help you go through some of the most basic things that you need to prepare. Because the reality is, when it happens, you need to know what to do, right? Again, we said it's not an if, right? We now are telling you that as a small business is going to happen to you. So be prepared. Work with an entity to help you have a response plan. Work with an entity to have an IR plan. Work with an entity to have something in place to help you understand how to respond. Because your ability to respond is going to be the difference between your business going out of business and your business being able to survive it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know the three of us could have talked on this all day, and we had like 7 other business articles that we could refer to, but we'll talk about that next week. Certainly didn't mean to hit everybody with a sales pitch, but we're passionate about this. Like it's really important. You know what I think, guys, we need to come up with is the industry's stop, drop, and roll. Like what we got to think about that. Anyone who's watching this, come back to us if you've got a good idea on what could we say to people about stop, drop, and roll, because to your point, you got to be prepared. We learned it as kids in school, how to be prepared for a fire emergency. How many of us have actually been through a fire? Not everyone, but we prepared every day for it. So
no, that's true.
We got to come up with, that's the mission, should you choose to accept it. Guys out there watching, and you guys right here, Kadir and Larry, help me come up with our industry's stop, drop, and roll. So with that, I'm going to drop the mic and say thank you very much, guys, for joining me this week. And we will be back at you guys next week with whatever is current and incidentally in the news that week. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, Larry and Kadir.
Thanks,
Larry.